guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "Old Homeowner Tried to Evict Me from My Newly Bought House with Fake Documents." Oh boy, I never thought I would be one having to post a story like this. Me and my wife had recently bought our first home as we're extremely excited about it. Unlike what I'm assuming most buying experiences go, like we didn't see a previous owner or anything because the house was foreclosed on, and we bought it directly from the bank. It was in our budget, and we loved it, so we moved in right away, not even thinking about what could have happened to the previous owner. The first 6 months were fantastic until we heard a knock on the door, and I opened it to see a woman standing there. Me. "Can I help you?" The women ran under my arm and right into the house. Wife. "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" Woman. "I live here, you two get the hell out of my house." I am extremely confused but try to get information out of her. Me. "We bought this house, so we own it. We have for the last 6 months. Woman. "Well, it was my house a year ago, so you two leave." I now understand this must be the previous owner that got her house foreclosed on her. I wanted to try and talk to her, but she seemed erratic, so I signaled my wife to go in the bedroom and call the police. When they got there, before I could say a word, the woman started saying how me and my wife broke into her house. Policeman. "Is this true, sir?" Me. "Not in the slightest, officer. We own this house, and I can show you the deed. She is the previous owner that got the property foreclosed on her. They make the crazy woman leave, and I hope that will be the end of her." Of course, it isn't though, and for the next year she comes to the house every few months and starts banging on the doors. We got one of those Ring cameras so we can see that it's her and not let her in, and threaten to call the police on her. This causes her to go running for the hills, but then she finds another way to try and bother us. That comes in the form that she is having her mail sent to our house. It isn't just stupid mail either, we are talking about medical information, bills, important notices. I have no idea why she is doing this, and I go to the post office and explain that she doesn't live here anymore and is just sending her mail to our address. He says that he will look into it, and in the meantime, I request my mail be sent to a P.O. box because I'm worried she is going to try and go riffling through my mailbox for her stuff. I get important private information too that I wouldn't want her stealing. So, I get a key, and every couple of days on the way home from work I go and pick up the mail, sift out her stuff and tell them that it isn't her mail. One day I find out that my key stopped working, and I go to find out that woman showed up with a fake deed to the house and wanted to get it changed. The person working that morning didn't see about the dispute and ended up changing the lock and giving her a key. I had it changed right away, but it turns out she got away with that day's worth of mail. I was sick of this crap and decided I was going to take her to court for mail theft, trespassing, and using a fake deed to claim ownership of the house. When we finally get to court, though, I figure out what that crazy lady was trying to steal the mail for. She was using it to try to prove that the house was hers and she was living in it. Woman. "See, this mail has my name and address on it. Plus, I have the deed, so they are squatting in my home, and I want you to have them evicted. I haven't been able to live on my home for over a year because of them." Judge. "I'm comparing the two deeds and it's clear that the one you have is fake. It's an old deed and the date has been altered on it." Woman. "Do you not even see the mail that has my name on it?" Judge. "That doesn't show proof that you are living at that address. It just shows that you were marking it as your residence even though it isn't." The woman shut up after this, and the judge looked over all of our evidence, including the door camera footage and her stealing the mail out of my P.O. box. In the end, the judge granted us a restraining order and said if she tries to come up to the property again to call the police, and they will have her arrested. They also confiscated her fake deed so she couldn't use it to try and pull another fast one on somebody and pretend the house belongs to her. Finally, they stopped all mail with her name on it from coming to our house so we could stop paying for the P.O. box and get back to normal. You would think it would end there, and after a judge warning, the woman would back off. Nope. Only a few months later she was back to banging on our door again, telling us to get out of our house. This time we did what the judge said, and we called the police without warning her, and they showed up to take her away. I have no idea what they did to her, but I do know that we haven't heard from her since. Maybe she was arrested, or maybe she finally got it through her crazy head that she can't violate a restraining order without getting into some serious trouble. Either way, I am extremely happy that she hasn't been back, and the mail we get now only has our names on it. As far as the costs for all of this, our home insurance covered the lawyer, so we didn't have to pay a dime for him. The P.O. box cost us a little bit of money, but it was honestly worth it to stop this woman from going through our mail for a little while. In the end, the advice I have for anyone else in this situation is to not wait as long as we did for something like this to escalate, and instead shut it down right away, because there is no trying to deal with crazy when it literally comes banging on your door. The next story is titled, "Drive into Our Yard to Destroy Snowmen." Okay then. This was just about 3 years ago, so the details may be a little forgotten. So, my family owns a little house in Sweden. It is about 3 hours north of Stockholm. We often go there on vacation since we have a lot of vacations in Sweden. There were about 30 houses in the village we lived in at the time. In this village there was this Ahol that just bought a new expensive Porsche SUV that he flexes on everyone. Had a wealthy family and got the car from his dad. He was about 23 and had never made a single penny from his own work and was always a spoiled kid. Now to the story. We had invited my best friend to join us while we went to our house during winter vacation, and we were going to stay there for 4 days then go back to Stockholm. Me and best friend, BF, built bunch of mini snowmen, about 40 centimeters tall, or a little over 1 foot for you Americans, on the side of the road. When we were still making the snowmen, Ahol comes in his SUV and drives over our snowmen. Me and BF were sad and went to tell my parents what happened. They said that they couldn't do anything about it since it was on the side of the road and not on our property. Me, BF and amazing dad and mom, AD and AM, help us build up the snowmen again, but 1 to 2 meters into our property so that they would not be run over. At this time, we went in for lunch. We had a window from our dining room to our front yard where all of the snowmen were. Midway during lunch we hear a loud room. All of us look out while we see the gray Porsche turn into our lawn and drove them all over. My mom was furious and began cussing him out, even though he wasn't there. Now my parents were in full revenge mode. We built even more snowmen, but this time my mom and dad put gigantic 14 centimeters, 5 inches, spikes in the bottom of them. We built many more than there were before so that he would not be able to resist driving over them. Some hours later we hear a loud bang outside. We immediately rushed to our window and saw the gray Porsche SUV in our lawn. Ahol inspects the wheels and then runs to our door knocking like a maniac. Dad opens the door and before he could say a word Ahol screams at him for ruining his tears and says Hugh is going to sue. Ahol starts cussing at him and Dad does the same. My mom takes us to their bedroom upstairs to avoid us from the bad language. We were only 10, then goes down to help Dad with Ahol. Ahol never sue and ended up having to pay about $2,000 for the new tiers that would match the ones he had. He didn't have the normal wheels but some special kind, and for someone to put them on his car. Not many people liked him to begin with, but this definitely didn't boost his reputation. The next story is titled, "Trick Me Out of My Laptop, You'll Give Me Your Car." 13 years ago, I was in my late teens, living on my own and really struggling to live financially. One of the few possessions I had was an old laptop. My laptop had stopped working properly, and while I'm fairly proficient in using a computer, I had no idea about fixing them. I did a bit of searching on the internet but couldn't get it working, so I asked my stepdad to take a look. He has a quick look and says it ducked, but he'll take it off my hands if I don't want it, so I said sure. If it's broken, then it's no good to me. 10 minutes later I walk in the room and he's using it. I asked if he fixed it and he say yeah, thanks for the laptop. I was obviously pissed. My mom says she wasn't getting involved and his only response was that he did a quick internet search to find the fix and I could have done the same. I was broken and he took one of my only possessions even though he had a PC and a laptop already. A few months later I was visiting my mom and stepdad when I had an idea. While I am useless with computers, I'm very competent with mechanics. Specifically, Audis, and my stepdad had a 2001 Audi A3. Before coming in the house, I went under his car and unplugged the oil level sensor and a vac line for the turbo. Later on, that day he went to go to the shop or something. When he started the car, it threw up oil warning lights on the dash and wouldn't boost, so he turned it off and had a look of concern on his face. I went out to ask him what's up and he said that something gone majorly wrong. He says something along the lines of catastrophic turbo failure or engine failure. He's already spent quite a bit on repairs and didn't want to spend any more money on it, so spoke to my mum about just cutting his losses and scrapping it. I asked how much it's worth at the scrapyard and he says £100, so I ever so graciously off £120 to take it off his hands to maybe part it out, which he accepts. He signed over the logbook, title, and wrote me a receipt of purchase and handed the keys over. I walked outside, lifted the bonnet, pretended to look at my phone for a minute, went under the car and plugged the vac line and oil sensor back in, fired it straight up and drove around the block. When I got back, I gave him the thumbs up and said it's all fine now. His mouth was wide open, and he was mega pissed, and my reply was, you could have found the solution too with a quick internet search. He tried arguing that it wasn't fair and if it's working then I can't just take his car, but I just said he didn't have a problem tricking me out of my laptop and that he's already signed the car over to me, so tough luck. My mum kinda laughed and said she's not getting involved and that it was his own fault. I still have the car to this day and it's practically in showroom condition and runs sweet. Edit. Guys and girls, it's not that unbelievable. I tricked someone into thinking their car was broken so I could have it. Yes, it's 100% true. Yes, I know I'm in a hole and I don't deny that it was a douche move, but I thought people might get a kick out of a bit of revenge. The last story is titled, Height Approved. This isn't my story, but my parents'. It was about 25 years ago, so I was about 8, and we had just moved into a 150-year-old house that was in need of major repairs. My dad, thinking ahead, knew he would need a large garage workshop to really get started on the renovations properly. On the edge of our yard was an ancient barn that was falling apart and needed to be torn down. My dad figured this was the best place to build his new workshop, so that was the plan. We had met and were on good terms with all the neighbors at that point. When the plans for the new workshop were finished, my parents went around to all the neighbors as a courtesy to show them the plans and get their blessings. The neighbors whose property the current barn and new workshop would border, I'll call them the Peters, were concerned about the height. The existing barn was 16 feet high, and they asked if we could only build it 1 story, 12 feet max, as to not block the sun in their yard. Sure, no problem, my parents agreed. They wanted to go 2 stories for extra storage, but just 1 wasn't a deal breaker. So, the old barn was torn down and the foundation laid for the new one. During that time, there was a falling out with the Peters and my parents. I'm not sure what happened, but it turned nasty. One day, my brother and I were playing street hockey and Mr. Peters came out yelling at us. "Get off the road, you half-breed shits, you have to earn your place in this town." My dad is black, so we're both half black. Upon hearing this, my mom had to physically restrain my dad from going over and beating the living crap out of him. Eventually, he cooled off and started on his plan. The plans for 1 story went out the window. Soon, the new garage that was only supposed to be 1 story soon gained a second in the blueprints. If they were going to direct racist comments at his kids, my dad would build what he wanted. As construction started, the Peters came over to ask why there was 2 stories being built and were told to go duck themselves. We didn't hear from them again until the roof started to go on. The bylaws of the township limited all-out structures to 24 feet high. The Peters called the township and then a building inspector, claiming that the new garage was over 24 feet high. If it was over height, the entire thing would have to be torn down and rebuilt, costing us tens of thousands of dollars. I remember the Peters standing there, watching the inspector, with smug looks on their faces. 2 days later, we got the final report back from the township and inspector. 23 feet, 11 inches, just as my dad had drawn up in his new plans. He sent me up on the roof of the garage, just plywood, no singles yet, with some spray paint and had me write 23 feet 11 inches, height approved in 2-foot-high neon orange letters across the entire roof, facing their yard and house. Not only did the garage block all sunlight from reaching their yard, but my dad waited until everything else was done before he shingled that side of the roof. They had to stare at those neon orange letters for almost 3 years. We didn't hear a peep from them for the next 10 years until they moved. Thanks for listening.